Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming. I feel like this is very intimidating in a room full of professionals. But I'm just going to really share from my heart and just share my passion for radio and why it is, why I do what I do and why it is that we do what we do collectively in this room. So I need to get to the beginning of my I think you got the bottom half of my thing stuck to your laptop, not? Okay. Sorry about that. I think that's it. No. No, this is a bit of a... Yeah, so what we're going to do, we're going to do a little icebreaker. And I'm no good at icebreakers. I'm just as bad at telling jokes. We have a comedy corner on our breakfast show, and I never get it right. Yeah, I delegated to my co-host. Now you do the joke. So we've got an icebreaker, and Karen's going to tell you exactly what you need to do. Do I have to partake as well?
Yes.
All right.
Okay. So if everyone...
Here's your mic.
Do I need to use the mic?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Morning. So I want to do a little exercise that's hopefully going to blow your minds a little bit. I hope you haven't done it before. But you've all got a piece of paper. Yes. So I just want you to take a piece of paper, hold it in your hand any way you want to, and I want you to close your eyes. Okay, everybody keep your eyes closed. And all I want you to do is just listen to the instruction that I give you and do whatever you feel led to do. Please fold the piece of paper in half. No questions, with your eyes closed, yeah. Okay, once you've done that, please fold the piece of paper in half again. Now flip the piece of paper over in your hands. Find the top right-hand corner and tear off the top right-hand corner of that piece of paper. Okay, flip the paper over again and tear off the top right-hand piece again, but try and make it a bit bigger than your last tear. So tear off quite a bit if you can. Okay. Now I want you to open up your eyes. I want you to open up your piece of paper, and I want you all to hold your piece of paper up in the air. So take a look around you at everybody's sheets of paper. And what do you notice?
All different.
Everybody's paper is different. But what happened is you all heard the same message. I delivered it the same. You heard it at the same time. The instructions were the same for everybody. Okay? But everybody got a different piece of paper. And it's exactly like that when we work in communication, when you work in radio. The only thing you have control of is the message that you're putting out there. What you don't have control of is how people are listening. Yeah. Okay? That is all up to God. So the only obedience you need to have when you are putting out your content or doing anything for that matter on air is, what is God telling me to do in this moment? Am I doing what He is telling me to do? And then trusting that God is going to do the rest, that it lands with each particular person as it's supposed to land. And just like Scripture, you can read the same verse 100 times, and every time you get a different understanding of it. It's the same with whatever the presenters are putting out on air. So I just want you to remember that exercise the next time you think, is the message I'm putting out there, are people hearing what I want them to hear? The answer is probably no. You know, the gospel's pretty simple. But as long as you're telling the gospel in truth and with the sincerity that it's meant to be shared, then you are doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Okay.
Well, well done, Karen. You see why I didn't do the icebreaker? I would have completely messed it up. Anyway, good afternoon. Thanks, everybody, for coming. I've got a lot of notes here, so I'm going to pretty much read, and I'll see how we go from there. But we all know, and I think my notes, by the way, have kind of changed as the last day or 2 days have actually gone. I've been adding things in, and we've even added a slide or two in, because I've just been picking up so many nuggets from what's been happening from the plenary speakers. But we all know that radio is much more than just background noise. You know, for some people it is that thing in the background that's just there, but it's not a noise. It is much more than background noise. It's more than music. It's more than the links we play. It's more than the adverts. Radio has the unique power to reach people where they are. And I think all of us who's involved in radio broadcasting. I know who you are. And the others. Okay. So radio has that ability to reach people where they are. I mean, you can be in their bedrooms, their bathroom, I don't know, in the garage, the workshop, the lounge, the dining room, wherever it is. So we have that ability to be there in that space. I also want to share a quick story of my story and talking about radio reaching people where they are. And not necessarily only where they are physically, in terms of in the lounge or in the car or in the kitchen, but where they are in life, in their journey. And my wife came to know the Lord as a result of Link FM. So we were, I think Pete knows my story. I'm an ex-drug addict. And there was a time in my life where my wife and I, we were just missing each other like ships in the night. You know, we were working in the same business. And I was out doing all sorts of things. I'm a musician, so I play, and I was in bands and shows and traveling around the country. And I was never at home. But at the same time, I developed a love for cocaine. It was actually a love affair. It's like anybody may have a lover. I had a lover, and my lover was cocaine. So anyway, I'm going to try to cut the story short. So we were really, our marriage was going right down the tubes. We were in business together. We were working together. And one lunchtime, I remember she was going somewhere at lunchtime, and we had a little confrontation. And I said to her, "What's your problem?" And she said, "You, my problem." And I thought, how arrogant. I mean, how can I possibly be your problem? You know, I was so self-centered, so narcissistic. Anyway, on that day, she drove down to the beachfront in East London, and she parked on the beachfront. She just wept her eyeballs out. She just sat in the car crying. She put the radio on, and she was flipping through the channels. I think it was still one of those old school Telefunken radios. And she found this station. And the song that was on at the time, she obviously picked up immediately on the lyrics that, hey, this is not like your other stations. This is different. And she realized this is Christian music. I'm hearing Christian lyrics coming through, and we'd never heard that before. Neither of us, we knew that Link FM was around, but it's not anything that interested us. And as a result of that, where Link FM reached her in that place where she was in her life, distraught and broken, she carried on listening to Link FM, went outside and went and got herself a Bible, started going to church, got herself into a midweek cell group, and slowly but surely she gave her life to Christ, and that is what Link FM has done in my life and my family. And I mean, I despised the family with everything that was inside of me. I did not like Link FM. I'd get in the car, we'd change the station, we'd have this big argument, 5FM, Link FM, 5FM, Link FM. You know, and then I came to the Lord. My quick journey to Link FM, my quick story, well, I'm going to cut out a lot. I bottomed out the business, we sold it, and we liquidated the business. And I was working at a church in East London. And in that church building was Link FM, this radio station. I'd wanted to do radio when I came out of school in 1977. That's a long time ago. I'm 66 at the moment, at this point in my life. And so I wanted to do radio when I came out of school. And I lost the passion. My girlfriend fell pregnant. I had to get on that treadmill. I'd applied to Capital Radio to go and be a presenter on all the hits and more on 604. I won the Wild Coast in Port St. John's. But then I got onto the working treadmill. I worked in a family business. I became a butcher. So instead of being a drummer and a musician and an artist and a radio personality, I ended up becoming a guy in gumboots and a white coat cutting up meat all day. Now, I did that for 23 years, became terribly, terribly angry, and that's where the drugs came into this whole lifestyle of ours. Anyway, fast forward, we get rid of the business, and I end up taking up a job in this church. The pastor of the church, who happens to be Peter's cousin, Pastor Andre Raybert, he took me in, gave me a job, and I was earning a stipend. And one day he called me, and he said to me, "I want you to come to my office." And I went down, and there was a lady sitting there, and he said, "I want to introduce you to somebody. This is Cheryl Oberay. She's the station manager for Link FM, and they have an opening to do the afternoon drive." And he says, "I think you're the person for the job." And I looked at him and I said, "Would you believe it? That this is what I've always wanted to do. This has been my passion. This has been my dream vocation. I've always wanted, and that's how I stepped into radio. Yeah, and my wife, I had to go back and tell my wife what I was doing. It was, anyway, my wife's, when I confessed to her, but she didn't know I was doing drugs, the day I confessed to her, I went to see a friend who led me to Christ. She actually said, you go and talk to that guy. But I had to come clean and tell her what I'd be doing. She thought I was just drinking like crazy. Meantime, I was doing all these drugs and siphoning money out of the business. I sold my motor car to a drug dealer to put money back into the business. I could draw it out again. It was this horrible, vicious cycle. And when I had to come clean and tell her, she said to me, this is grace. That was yesterday. And we're going to take the next step forward. And we did. We married 45 years last week. Wow. So it's been a long journey, but boy, oh boy, has it been a good journey. The Lord is good, and His mercies endureth forever. So that is how I got into radio. So radio will meet you in that place where you are. That's where Link FM met me, or met my wife, and as a result, it filtered down to me. And at Link FM, I was going to talk a little bit about Link FM. We can probably talk a lot about Link FM. But our mandate, our heartbeat is to link people to Jesus. And that is all we want to do. So in this moment right here, where we are at this conference, it's about pausing, it's about resetting, and just remembering why we do what we do. Why do we do what we do? Because we're part of a bigger thing than just airtime and bigger than the program schedules. We're far bigger. The mandate that we have is bigger than ourselves. We've heard this morning, I can't remember which speaker was saying, that it's not about me, it's about Christ. And we know that. So every time we open the mic, every time we hit a play button, or every time we schedule a show or put a show together, we have the opportunity to impact lives, as it did my wife, to encourage hearts and to point people towards hope. That is our mandate, just to point people towards hope. So let's not forget the work we do matters, and it matters eternally. I've said this many times on air, to our supporters and our partners. When we do an altar call on air and maybe 2 people, 1 person, 100, I don't know. I mean, who has a meter in the studio that measures, how many lives came to Christ on that day when you did that altar call? We don't have a church where we can see the people that come to the altar. And I always tell my audience that those souls will be accredited to your heavenly account. If you're a partner with this ministry and you sow into this ministry, it's not about me and my big mouth on the microphone doing an altar call and Titch got 4 people saved. No, we all did. Every single one of us, from Karen on sales and marketing and everybody. So that is so important just to understand that. And we can talk about vision, we can talk about strategy and all of that stuff. We can talk about that all day long, but nothing speaks louder than the voices of the people that we serve. Our listeners are important to us because at the end of the day, radio is not about transmitters and schedules. It's about lives changed. And I can remember going to Lance Rothschild came to Port Elizabeth, so we had to go down there for a SA Radio Awards presentation. What are they called? Those training things. And Algoa FM were there. I don't know if anybody knows Algoa, but they are like KwaZulu-Natal's East Coast Radio. So they for Eastern Cape. So they go from Port Elizabeth right the way down to George, right the way down the coast. And Algoa were there, with their chests out, and they were like really strutting their stuff. And it was ourselves. Kingfisher weren't on air at that time. 1 or 2 people from another community radios. And they were talking about a trucker that had gone across the Van Stadens River Bridge. And if anybody doesn't know the Van Stadens River Bridge, it's notorious for people jumping off and taking their lives. It's become so bad that it's literally got cages over the top of this thing. And they've got a telephone there, and there's a helpline, and monitors and cameras and all sorts. But they were talking about this one incident where this trucker was going across the Van Stadens River Bridge some years ago, and he saw this guy just about to jump and take his life. The trucker stopped and came up and approached this fella, and he didn't know what to do, so he phoned Algoa FM studio, and they were able to then do the necessary, get people involved to go there and talk this guy down from jumping. And I remember Algoa said, and that's what our job's all about, saving lives. And I leaned over and I looked down the table, and I tried to be as calm as I possibly could. And I said, we do that every day on Link FM. That is our mandate, is to link people to Jesus and save lives. I think his candle just went out like that. But anyway, that's what we do. We asked some of our listeners just to share their experiences with us at Link FM. And we got a couple of voice notes. that we're going to play for you, just to remind us about the real stories. I mean, there's some people that, one in particular on this voice note, I've been wishing her a happy birthday from when she was about 5 or 6. She's now married with her own children. And we're still wishing her a happy birthday and her family, and so it goes. But you understand, you're in radio, you build that personal relationship with your listeners, and it is so valuable. You can't put a value to that in rand value. So Karen's going to hit the button here, and then we're going to just listen to a couple of these voice notes.
Link FM was a part of my home as a child. I remember my parents every Sunday morning as we're getting ready for church, and the house would just be blasting from Link FM, getting ready to go to church. And even as I grew older in my adolescent, teenage years, even as an adult, when I moved abroad and I lived in South Korea, Link FM was my link to home. And you have no idea how much hearing a familiar voice means to you when you are so far from your loved ones, and Link FM really was my link to home. Now as a married woman, I get to carry that on with my family. My husband and I, we listen to Link FM with the kids, and I get to keep passing that on. So Link FM has really been there for me in the different ages and stages and seasons of my life, and I'm so grateful.
I particularly enjoy the intentionality around the ministration of the word. And I've seen the ease and intentionality around the credibility and authenticity of individuals that share the word, because it does really encourage and nourish our souls. I'd like to appreciate the work that the team do around the stakeholder relations. I've seen that there's a focus on building on-air relations with religious leaders in the city, with the different pastors that were brought in and the different shows. And I've seen similar with regards to business. I've seen with my first meeting this week in the BNI, involvement of Link FM, linking up business individuals to trade value for the business, to spread the gospel through success of business individuals that are believers. And I think that, for me, it was quite powerful to witness. And thirdly, in terms of the on-air partnerships and the off-air partnerships, which translate into a community that is being built up with Link FM being the common denominator. Thirdly, I just want to appreciate, when I started listening, I think we had Sim with you, Titch, and I remember we had Nolo, and now we have Viva, and all of them, even though some of them might maybe their first presenting gig, but we don't see it over time, because you trade such a conducive environment, you trade space for them to be agile and just to grow on us. And I think that speaks to your leadership and to your grace, and I just want to appreciate that. May the Lord continue to bless you guys. May the Lord continue to enrich the community of Islam, and to the Father, that the Lord takes His gospel through Link FM and build more homes, more communities through the spreading of the gospel. Thank you very much.
If I have to start telling you what Link FM have meant and done for myself and our home, we also used to listen to one of the other radio stations. The radio plays from the morning right until the evening. There's a radio playing in our home, and at one stage it was some other radio station, and I flipped over to Link FM. Link FM did exactly what you do. You link people to Jesus. And I had been a child of God, and I'd fallen by the wayside. And through one of your presenters one morning, on my knees in the lounge, I gave my life back to the Lord. And yes, I just thank you for what you guys do for us, for the community, for Jesus, what you do for Jesus. God bless you. Thank you very much. You've linked me to Jesus, and I've just grown from strength to strength. Thank you, Link FM. God bless you.
Good morning, Link family.
That's enough.
Thank you for...
Yeah, I think we've heard enough. But that's the impact that we make as broadcasters in Christian radio, is that we're right there in the car. That particular fellow at the end there, Theo, I bumped into him somewhere, and he recognized me, and we got chatting, and he wasn't going to church, his wife was going to an Achieus Kerk, and the two of them were completely also just drifting apart like that. And through just a series of building up a friendship and a relationship and trust with him, they were going to church separately. They started going to church together, and I was able to get him hooked up and put him and place him in a church. And he's growing. He's on. I think he's on the leadership, on the eldership. No, not yet. But anyway, he's part of a church. So it's just great to be able to see those relationships formed in what we do. Link FM launched what we call a good, clean, family-friendly radio campaign. We realized that there was a place in the market for good, clean, family-friendly radio. We all know, we look around, we just see what's happening on secular radio. Moms and dads have got no clue what the jocks are going to say next. And we capitalized on that, and we had some people talking to us about, my kids were so embarrassed this morning. And we went on this massive campaign. We had a huge billboard put up in town, and we didn't rebrand the station, or, in terms of our logo, but we just created another good family-friendly, clean family-friendly radio logo, and we launched that out, and it's really paying off. I mean, the next voice note we were going to play was a lady telling us about how her and her children just feel so safe in the car in the mornings, knowing that what they're hearing is good and it's clean and it's family-friendly. So I want to go to the next slide. I don't know if we're there, from playlist to purpose, and we're going to go quickly through this because Karen's already told me I've taken up 30 minutes of my time. But we all know radio is a one-on-one medium. So every time we open that mic, okay, there's a person on the other side, as we've heard, listening, not just one person in a crowd, but one heartbeat, one mind, one set of ears. So here's the question for you as broadcasters: is what you're putting on air making that one person feel seen? Does it make them feel heard? Does it make them feel encouraged? Or do they just feel like they're one in the crowd? And that's what I always do when I train our presenters. You speak to a person one-on-one, because if I'm sitting in my car and I've got a gun in my one hand and a bottle of brandy in the other, and I've done with life and I want to take my life, and I happen to, as my wife happened to stumble upon Link FM, and you're talking to you guys and a bunch of people, I'm not going to feel special. But if you talk to me as an individual, that's the whole idea of speaking to one person. And I loved what Imang said yesterday: introspect before you speak. Gee whiz, I've heard some things being said on radio, even on Christian radio, even by myself and my presenters. Did you not think before you opened your mouth and spoke? So we need to introspect before we speak. And I love what I think she also said it, that talk is not cheap. It's by His word that God created the universe. That's a beautiful quote right there. That talk is not cheap. We've just reminded ourselves that radio is deeply personal, one-on-one. But here's the next question: am I blending spiritual depth with technical excellence? So as we move on to the technical aspect of what we do, everything on air speaks, even the dead air. The dead air speaks, and that speaks of just carelessness and, maybe just not concentrating. So if we bring deep spiritual content, but it's messy, what does that tell our listeners? It's hard to follow. They don't get it. It's technically poor. People are going to switch off. They're going to do something else, or they maybe just never come back. But if we sound slick and we sound polished and we lack spiritual depth, then what's the point? So you can have a lot of depth but be doing it poorly, or you can have a lot of slick programming but no depth in your program. So there is that balance that we have to strike between what we're putting out there. Is it spiritually deep for our listeners, and is it also of excellence in terms of the output product that we're doing? We were talking about radio awards earlier on, Wesley and myself and Daniel, and I mean the SA Radio Awards. For me, I've never enjoyed that whole concept, but I understand it's necessary that we need to be in that space, because you guys were awarded Community Radio Station of the Year, and that's brilliant, because it gets the people in that room to understand, hey, Christian radio is alive and is real. But to put your best show into 6 minutes, I'm like, what? And I've said it to one or two of my guys, just jokingly, and they get the joke, I promise you, that you'd have a separate submission. So that's your submission. Here's mine pertaining to your show. Because the guys are good. They put on good, slick shows, but they're lacking the technical ability. Dead air. They're in the bathroom, or they're making coffee. They're talking to the girls in the office. They're everywhere but in the studio. And the show just does a complete nosedive. And we've got a strict policy when it comes to jingles. You don't come out of a talk break, start your back announcing process, and suddenly a jingle goes crashing through your head. And all that kind of thing happens. So, but when it comes to the radio awards, you can get by because you can squeak and take all those little things out. So, do my words carry weight? Does my show sound like I prepared? Am I prayed up before I go on air? That is so important. And have I done the work? Have I done the hard yards and made sure that the content I'm putting out there is good? Our words and our tone. You can always tell if somebody's having a bad day by the tone of their voice when they're in a studio. I'm going to have to move along quickly here. So I want to get onto this thing of volunteers, and it was a topic of conversation in the board meeting the other day. When it comes to, is this a job or is this a calling? Am I doing this just because? Am I here because it matters? Or am I just one of those volunteers? And here's the thing, if you're a volunteer and you come to Link FM and you just want to come and volunteer your time, then I'm at your mercy. I'm relying on your convenience. I'm relying on your mood, your schedule. Are you available? Aren't you available? Has something else come up and you can't come to your show? But if you are called to community radio, it's between you and God if you don't pitch. And we've got these volunteer forms that we make everybody fill in. And we've changed the wording at the top and we've taken out volunteer and it's called with a question mark. Because if you come in there and I'm just going to come volunteer, then anything can come up and you can just say, well, I'm not going to come today. Sorry, can't be there. Something else came up. So I think it's vitally important that our presenters, those who are, we're going to probably end up calling them volunteers in any case, but those who are volunteering understand that it's more than just I'm volunteering. I'm actually here because the Lord has called me to this function. So maybe you can just put these questions to your presenters and your team. Are you treating this like something that you just fit into when you can, or that fits into your schedule when you can do it, or are you seeing this as an assignment from God? A job is temporary, but a calling carries eternal weight. So we're not just DJs, we're not techies, we're part of God's mission. So let's not just fill airtime with a lot of empty words. Who's ever heard of that term, nothing words? Eh? I mean, I've listened so often, I hear people talking and there's a lot of nothing words that come into a sentence, And if you were to take those nothing words out, the sentence would make complete sense. But all these little sentences come in. Actually, I was saying. Actually is a nothing word. There's a whole lot of them. So listen out for the nothing words. And then youth programming. I was quite astounded to find that not a lot of stations are running full-on youth programs and children's programming. We've got a youth program that we run every Monday to Friday. It's 2 hours a night. And we heard today, we know the Gen Zs, the youth of today, they don't want half-baked, watered-down nonsense. They want the truth. They want the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So I think it's imperative that we do children's programming or youth programming. So it's Monday to Friday, 2 hours a day. I've got a team of 12 people that run that show, and it's deep. And every night they give me a report back of what they've discussed, all their interactions with the people online and via social media, WhatsApp, and I get a full report every day on my desk in my office of exactly what happened, and I can go back and listen to it if I want to. Children's programming. We've got a children's programming that runs on a Saturday, and it is absolutely superb. We have about 10 children that come in the studio. They're monitored by 4 adults, and we're putting this program together. It's still in the early stages, but I tell you something, it's really, really a good program. Just to see little 6, 7, 8-year, 9-year-old, 10-year-olds coming in there and just ministering on air to adults in that space. So if you haven't got a children's program, make space for it. You won't be sorry. You won't be sorry. I was going to delve into governance in quite a deep way, because I really believe a lot of community radio stations are not surviving because of poor governance. But I think in this space, I don't see any particular problems in that area. I think we all got our governance structures in place. Because ministry without structure, or ministry with structure, protects the mission of the ministry. So that governance, that good governance, it acts like guardrails. It keeps the station anchored to its core purpose. Ministry with structure builds accountability. Ministry with structure increases trust with donors and partners. I'm very fortunate and very blessed to have a board. I've actually got two boards that I report to at Link FM. I've got a board of management and I've got a board of trustees. And the one reports to the other. So we've got this 3-tier. It's from us on the ground in the studio to them up there. So I can't do anything without their approval. They can't do anything without their. So there's this complete pathway of accountability between the three structures, being those on the ground, board of management and board of trustees. And the board of management for ICASA, and off the record, actually manages the station. I'm the station leader. So, that's how we kind of manage that particular aspect of ICASA, and this thing of the manager can't be on air. I'm the station lead, and that's what my contract says. So ICASA actually cannot come and do anything about it. And the station manager is the person that sits on the board who is accountable for management. And we've got HR on the board, and we've got skills development, and so on and so forth. And then we've got the trustees who are there for spiritual accountability. So I have an issue with a spiritual issue. We'll have a problem with a spiritual issue at Link FM. Maybe somebody said something. I've got a big problem with a pastor that preached something that he shouldn't have. And there's a big hoo-ha brewing. I go to my board of trustees, and they will then guide me through that process of how to deal with that one. So that's how we operate as a board at Link FM. A very prickly topic, tithing. I don't know if everybody in all your organizations in this room tithe, but Link FM, we tithe 10% every Monday of everything that came in, of the full income into Link FM. 10% goes into our tithe account. That is 10% of our partnerships and 10% of advertising. All goes in our tithe account, and that tithe account we use for projects, community-based projects that we facilitate. And then just something that I also wanted to bring in, and it's to do with my board, and that's that thing of balance and spirit-led wise stewardship. And I see myself in one or two of these. So a balance, the balance rather, is it spirit-led and wise stewardship? Is it one or the other, or is it both? So on one hand, we want to be fully open to the prompting of the Holy Spirit. And that's me. I feel the Holy Spirit saying this to me, but I haven't given it much thought, So when it comes to wise stewardship, I've had to learn to do this properly, do due diligence. The idea might be great, but have you done your due diligence in pulling off the idea? Because you might launch this program, and after 6 months, the thing just crash and burns. Now the expectation on your listeners is, but where's that program? I was really loving it, and it's not there anymore. So there has to be a balance between spirit-led and wise stewardship. And the thing is, it's not either or. It's not either or. It is both and. So it's not either or. It's both and. Being spirit-led means listening for God's voice and being willing to act even when it stretches us. And practicing wise stewardship means creating systems and plans that make the most of the people, the finances, and the opportunities that God has entrusted to us. I've got the chairman of my board of management turns over a 5 Rand coin 10 times before I can spend it. Literally turns that thing over 10 times, and it's sometimes it's really painful, but you just want to get on with the project. You just want to do your thing. You've got this in your head, and it's like, I'm being led by the Spirit. The Lord spoke to me. You've got to do this, but I haven't really thought about the other aspects. And he has often had to just dial me back and just like, okay, let's just look at this thing properly. Get me a budget, put a budget together, and then we move forward from there. When we combine the Holy Spirit's leading and solid stewardship, something powerful happens. We take bold steps of faith, and we don't burn out. We grow our reach, but we stay rooted. So we can always grow our reach and be unrooted. You want to grow your reach and remain rooted. And we follow God's vision, but we're ready to sustain it for the long haul. So we don't launch things because it was a great idea and we felt it as spirit-led, but then we weren't able to sustain it because we didn't apply godly wisdom and a wise stewardship in that area. How am I doing for time, Karen?
You're okay to take some questions, maybe.
Yeah. So maybe some questions from that I can put to you, and maybe you guys can just, where in your ministry or your station do you earn or lean rather too far one way or the other? Is there any particular area in your ministries where you feel that you're leaning too far one way or the other? Not? Yeah, I know it is. Are you playing it safe then? Or are you missing God and missing God's leading? Because we can play it so safe that we actually miss what God's leading us to do. So we've got to be bold and we've got to get out there. But the other thing is, are you just winging it? Are you winging it in the name of faith and then burning the resources that you cannot afford to waste? So due diligence, and coming back to that point that I made just now, I think is of absolute importance that we need to be spirit-led, but we also need to be wise servants and wise stewardship. So I want to wrap it up with this statement before we get on to the next one, and we're going to fly through it. It's hard to speak clearly into your community if there's chaos behind the scenes. Good governance gives your ministry a strong backbone so your message can stand out. It's hard to speak clearly in your community when there's a lot of chaos happening in the background. But good governance gives your ministry a strong backbone so your message can stand out. You're going to move to the next slide, Karen. So looking at digital outreach and engagement, this is not really my forte. I was chatting to Roseanne. You know Roseanne, the lady who said that she's got a speech impediment. She's pretty sharp on computers and stuff. And we had a little conversation the other day where she was challenging me in areas that were unfamiliar with me. And I wasn't prepared to even go down that road because it's just not my forte. So I've got people that I'd rather say, you take care of that, than me try to do it and mess it up. So I think we also got to understand that we're not always good at everything. There are things that other people are gifted and called to do. So rather let them do it. And one of them is in this area of digital outreach and engagement. So why does it matter? Well, radio used to be the destination. Now people are scattered across all digital platforms. I don't think there's anybody in this room that's not using social media to a greater. I mean, I'm sure everybody's Facebooking live and doing YouTubes and podcasting and all that. Am I right? Yeah. Hey, Pete, you guys are doing it? Where's you guys? To an extent, yeah. Yeah. We have to be in that space. We kind of there at Link FM. You know, we run Link FM with 5 people. We've got a station of 5 people on the ground, and then we've got about 32 called presenters. We've got 5 people in the office that just put multiple hats on, and we go for it. And we're in the process now of really upping our game in that area of being on the cutting edge of social media with podcasting and YouTube stuff. So we're in the process of setting up a whole new camera network and what's that flashy keyboard called?
Stream Deck.
Stream decks and all that sort of stuff. See, it's unfamiliar to me, and I'm not going to deny it. I don't mind asking for help. So yeah, that is important. As you can go to the next slide there, Karen. Okay, so live videos, podcasts, social media posts, email marketing, and your websites. I mean, we all understand that is so important in our business. We've paid a lot of attention to this over the last 12 months, a heck of a lot of attention to it. And we're continuing to do more. I mean, our social media presence has escalated. What is the figures? Can you tell?
Well, the last 90 days, I'll say Facebook alone was about just under 1 million views. On
Facebook alone in the last 90 days. Whereas this time last year, I don't even think we were on 500,000. We've really pushed hard in that space with our social media. So that's where we're heading, and I'm sure that you guys are all heading into that space as well. Because I was having a convo with one of the American guys today, and he was saying, how far is your reach? And you know, when you tell them 150 kilometers, they're like, why so small? Then you've got to explain the whole thing of community radio being for the community, by the community. And at Link FM, we're fortunate in that we have another transmitter about 80 k's from the one from the other. And that's because they couldn't get our signal into King Williamstown, so they had to take us off a tower closer to King Williamstown. So that's about 80 kilometers to King, and then we've got another 150 from there. So by default, we've kind of extended our range in that area by about 80 to 100 kilometers.
So if
So, two frequencies, yeah. And two Centec bulls. It's always the problem. So yeah, so we're on 97.1, 92.1. Then we're also on the DSTV satellite bouquet. And then, of course, audio streaming. I was saying to Karen in the office this week, I can remember when we launched audio streaming and with the major excitement that came with it. Geez, I couldn't believe it, like this new technology, you know. And look where we've come in a very short space of time. So social media, we all understand that it's imperative that we get into that space. And it's not a competition. I don't see digital as being in competition to radio. Radio will always be there. A lot of folk that will say, radio's dead. Never. Radio will never die. I mean, in particular, community radio and community of interest broadcasters, being the Christian broadcasters, not dead. It's a companion. It's not a competition. So let's show up online like we show up on air, with purpose, with presence, and with heart. So a transition statement, this is called. No, I'm going to leave that out. Okay. And then I'm going to hand over to Karen, and she's going to bring us her presentation on community connection. But there's a couple of things that I took note of over the last couple of days, 2 days, was resilience. Resilience was something that everybody's been talking about, being resilient, getting up, showing up for Jesus every single day. Somebody this morning said that what we do is prophetic. We prophesy. We're building kingdom. We're kingdom builders through the media. Well, that's our tagline for this conference. And we've seen it in our space where you may have heard that one voice note. The guy said what he likes about Link FM is that he sees us collaborating with. Now that word collaborate was rubbished earlier on. Karen still nudged me. She said, that's one of my headings in my... But how we collaborating, if you want to call it, with other churches. We've got about 23 churches, I think it is, that partner with us in and around East London. I mean, there's a lot more churches, but there's about 23 churches that raised their hand and said, we believe in what you do, and they financially partner with us every single month. And that's amazing. That's a big number of churches, 23, in a little town like East London. So we're doing something right there. But we've seen the breaking down of the walls between the churches. And I know, we're in that space where different churches are coming in, and every pastor has got his little thing he likes. Have you heard about so-and-so? Or have you even... They skinner about one another. So I hear all of that sort of stuff, but I'm seeing there's a lot of... I was telling Pete the other day, in two mainline churches in East London that were very, let's call it anti-faith broadcasting network, Faith Church Buffalo City. And they are our tenants, so we rent our studio space from them. We happen to be in their building, but we're not part of it. So we rent from Faith Broadcasting Network. And there's always been this, not you guys, you that rich church, that, what's that other word? Prosperity teacher and all that sort of stuff. So, and it's been to our detriment because we're in the building. They feel that, you're part of that conglomerate, that empire. And but I've seen over the last year where two of those churches have actually made appointments to see the lead pastor of Faith Church Buffalo City and actually just seek forgiveness and just to reconnect and rebond. And I'm sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for my attitude, the stuff that I've been harboring in my heart, the bitterness, the anger, the resentment, and, shaking hands. And two of your mainline churches in East London. And that's amazing. That really, really is. Should I leave you with this question? If you were to close down tomorrow, would your city miss you? It's a heavy question. But if you were to shut your doors tomorrow, turn the mics off, switch the lights off, would your city actually miss you? That's a heavy question. It's a heavy question. Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much.